Good day, traders. My name's Chris Weston, Head of Research here at Pepperstone. We're talking today about all things US elections. So it's certainly come up in conversations more amongst clients. People are still very concerned about the outbreak of the coronavirus, but amongst all that, we are getting much more clearer picture about the process that's involved in the US election. So I'm joined today by my colleague, Sean MacLean. He's been putting a bit of work into the US election and the impacts for financial markets. So Sean, welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Chris.
We've been looking at the elections. We've had, I think, 3 different primaries or caucuses so far.
That's right.
But tell us a little about the process from here and why we should care about it.
Yeah, so the general election is in November, and that sounds a long way away, but there's a lot to do before then. For the Republican parties, they've decided Trump will run. But the Democratic Party, they have to decide who will represent them and lead them into that election. So how that works is that the states run a series of votes, and depending on the population of a state, the more populated they are, the more delegates they get. So candidates collect delegates as each state votes.
Correct.
Then we get to the Democratic Convention in July, 13th to 16th of July. Here, if a candidate emerges with a majority of delegates, the magic number is 1,990. You emerge with the majority, that's it, you're secured. They'll be the Democratic nominee.
Yep.
There's a lot of candidates this year. It's a very crowded field. So there is a chance we get to the Democratic Convention in July and there's no clear winner. And in that case, the Democratic Party step in themselves. They have an amount of super delegates, they call them, and the Democratic Party can vote for a candidate.
Yep.
Beyond that, you then have the presidential debates. So you'll have Donald Trump head-to-head with whoever the candidate is, and that's going to be an impossible task for anyone. Trump can rebut anything, nothing sticks, he can turn anything around.
Yep.
So that's a huge impossible task. I think right now it looks like Trump will maintain the presidency come November, but we're yet to see. We'll see how this plays out.
Cool. So we've got Super Tuesday coming up next week.
Yep,
that's going to be a big one. Why should we really care about Super Tuesday?
Well, straight to the point, statistically, volatility tends to pick up after Super Tuesday. And that's because on Super Tuesday, we have 14 states voting, 2 of the largest states, California and Texas. So on one day, we've got more than 30% of the delegates being awarded. If it all goes in one candidate's way, the markets might have an idea of who the winner could be.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at a situation where Bernie Sanders, who's got 2.5% of the delegates so far, it's early days, of course, but the bookies have got him as a clear favourite. But let's say he polls very well in all states, or most of the states there, and he picks up quite a lot of delegates, and it looks like he's potentially going to get to that magic 1,990 delegate level that you talk about. The markets don't necessarily like Bernie Sanders. What policies are they most afraid of?
Yeah, I don't even know if the Democratic Party themselves like him very much. He's actually an independent trying to run for the Democratic Party. Now, I've got this chart here, and this is where we see that Bernie Sanders is quite a polarizing, revolutionary figure. So let's look in the red area. We've got Wall Street and we've got taxes. This shows that Bernie Sanders wants a lot more involvement in big business. He wants a financial transactions tax. He even wants a tax on wealth. And a very interesting point is that he wants tough regulation on big tech. Now, these big tech companies, 4 of them are worth more than $1 trillion. They're a huge part of the stock market appreciation we saw last year and early this year. He wants to break these up because he sees them as anti-competitive. Markets are not going to like that, and that's not going to be good news for the US stock markets.
Will he get it through, though?
Well, that's the thing. If he wants to put any tax reform through, it's got to be passed through the House. It's got to be passed through Congress. At the moment, Congress is controlled by Republicans. It wouldn't get through if he were there now. And even if it is a Democratic-controlled Congress, he's got to convince his own party this is the way forward.
Okay, so he's got some fairly unique policies in that regard. But we've
sure.
been talking about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has been ahead in the polls for a while. Yeah, finally, there's been massive volatility in financial markets, but I'd say probably 95% of that can be attributed to the coronavirus and trying to model something we can't understand. But if we take that away and say we do see some calm coming in markets, at what stage between now and November does this election become a volatility event if it looks like Bernie Sanders is going to get the Democrat nominee?
Well, Super Tuesday, if Bernie Sanders does emerge as a clear favourite after Super Tuesday, I think markets will begin to price in some of that risk. Going long gold will be a very nice trade. If you're worried about at the state of the US, if under Bernie Sanders administration, you'd be pulling money out of the US dollar, going into the safe havens, the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc. Of course, we might not know after Super Tuesday. It's a very crowded field. And in that case, we'd be looking forward probably to the Democratic Convention when it's confirmed who runs. And again, that becomes a volatility event.
Yeah. So we talk about the various other candidates involved. This isn't necessarily the Bernie show, but talk to me about the other guys and girls that are involved in the mix and the possibility of them coming through.
Yeah, so I think just 1 month ago, it looked like this was Joe Biden's race. He's a former vice president. He's campaigning on continuing the work of the Obama administration. It looked like that he'd just walk into the nomination. If that were to be the case, markets know what to predict, right? Markets like the status quo, they like familiarity, they know what to expect with Joe Biden. Sure, it's not quite as friendly as what Trump provides, but it's familiar, it could be worked with. Joe Biden has performed quite poorly so far. South Carolina on Saturday is key. The theory is that he should have a lot of support among African American voters. So if he performs well this weekend in South Carolina, he's in the race.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's over for him.
I think you're right.
But another candidate we want to be looking at is Michael Bloomberg, former New York mayor and billionaire. He has spent $500 million so far on advertising, and a lot of that's been in California and Texas, where the most delegates are awarded from. He's performed poorly in debates, but he is ticking up slightly in the polls, so he could be a serious candidate here.
So we've seen Bernie Sanders ahead for some time. So let's use the bookie model as the one we're going. So let's say we do see Bernie Sanders going against Donald Trump. Most people would say Donald Trump would do pretty well against Bernie Sanders. But we've seen too many case studies now. Brexit, the Australian election, of course, 2016 presidential election, to believe that something that is widely not expected can actually happen. So we asked the what if, and if Bernie Sanders does come in, it's going to cause a shock to markets. But how big and what markets would you be looking at?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in markets like continuity, they like, politics aside, they're happy, they're comfortable with Trump, they know what to expect, and it's working for them. Stock markets have performed really well. Bernie Sanders is a big what if, and even if it looks like Trump will win the election, we're going to be pricing in some of that risk of a Sanders administration. And again, you're going to be pulling money out of US assets. You're going to be putting money into the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc, and long gold. Always going to be a nice trade.
So we talked about the process between now and November the 3rd. We're looking at Super Tuesday. We're going to be going into the convention. Who's going to be the runners and riders, and how many votes will they get? Will they get one individual get to that magic 1,990 delegates, or will we see a contested election and potentially an upset from what the bookies are saying at the moment? There's a lot to play for. Markets are volatile at the moment, but could the presidential election now be the next volatility event? Obviously, if we do see a Bernie Sanders win, and that seems unlikely according to the bookies, that could cause a big shock to markets. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on this situation now.